Uh, so, Dad, I want you to give me some opinions about the film we just saw. And for clarification, this was Left Behind, 2014, Nick Cage, and a bunch of people I've never seen before.
I believe that was the girl from Back to the Future.
The mom was totally... Oh, you're right. That was Marty McFly's mom from Back to the Future.
Yes.
So we have seen her once before.
Yes. Well, what I thought was that, first of all, I was roped in by reading that it was an action adventure type of film with Nicolas Cage, and that's all that was said in the review, which got me interested and intrigued.
Now, how would you describe the film post-seeing it?
Well, I would have to say it is out of a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best.
Right.
It's the closest to a 1 I've ever seen.
Does that include, what was that one film with old scrunchy face Renee Zellweger with Case 43, was it? Remember, we actually walked out of that one.
Well, I don't know about that one, but it was probably worse than the second remake of the Pink Panther movie.
Yes, I do remember you hated that one.
Yeah, it was cringeworthy. This movie had almost nothing redeeming about it, and even the funny moments were stupid.
Oh, okay, so that one little person actor who audiences would recognize from being in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, that's right.
And that's about it.
Yes.
He was the comic relief, and he played the stereotype of the angry little person with a chip on his shoulder because everyone thinks he's incapable, you know?
Yeah, we can slow down for a minute. We're going to run out of space to continue our video.
All right, I'm going to have to edit that out, Mr. Talk About the Video. Okay, but fair enough. Either way, point is that it was the only funny part of the film, and in many ways some of the only enjoyable parts of the film. One thing that struck me, just because this is... here, let's turn around. It's being light. Light. One thing that struck me, don't look at the camera, was that there were so many stereotypes being played up. So many. Like the one guy who was Muslim and everybody had to give him a little bit of trouble.
Because he was a terrorist, possibly?
He was. They mentioned that he's a terrorist. By the way, he didn't refute that. He was like, you think terrorists would do this? He didn't say he's not a terrorist. He just told them that the terrorists doing it would be a bad idea.
That's true. And did you notice that the little guy was sitting there in the aisle just tossing out, it was a bag of Cheerios, this was one bag, and a sandwich in the other bag?
Yes. And then, of course, the transition between him pulling out something from his bag and pointing it at the little guy and then immediately switching over to the ground where there was a gunshot is, you know...
But do you recall, though, also what he did? He pulled out a toothbrush and threatened the little person with an electric toothbrush.
Yes.
That was one of the comedic portions of the film.
You could call it comedic if you were so inclined. In the end, though, I think that I agree with you that this is one of the worst films I've ever seen.
Yes, and for him to land a jet on a road under construction somewhere in Long Island that his daughter just happened to clear with a pickup truck.
Yes. That had explosions on both ends.
It had explosions, and it was absolutely full of gas cans and various vessels full of gasoline.
Yes, which, by the way, are absolutely necessary for having on a construction site.
Yeah.
Like right next to...
Hundreds of them stacked.
Yes. Another thing that struck me was the absolutely unnecessary drama. Let's shift over a little bit. There were so many scenes where people were just hysterical and completely like, you need to find us answers. What answers do you expect? We're in a fucking plane. We are nowhere where answers are happening. And the people who would, the captain got up and said, when I know answers, you'll get answers. And people were like, that's not enough. That's all there can ever be.
Everything was stereotypical.
Oh,
everything was stereotypical.
This is exactly like someone took a writing textbook and basically applied every single basic math concept of writing a fucking movie to this script. Like everything, create drama by having your characters misunderstand each other. create comedy by having something lighthearted happen in a serious environment. Like, it was, without a doubt, just the whole film you saw. I was in pain, physical agony
Yes,
watching this.
You actually had your shirt pulled up over your eyes many times.
Which I haven't done since the Scary Movies back when I was a little kid.
Now, one of my favorite parts of the movie, though, I have to admit, was when they're flying through the air and all of a sudden their on-aircraft radar shows another plane approaching them.
Yes.
Then suddenly you look out the front of our plane and you can see it approaching. Now, both planes are going 400 miles an hour, and that scene lasted for about 5 minutes. And our pilot, Nicholas, did not pull away until the last second and allowed the other plane to clip his plane. Whereas any normal person would have avoided it at the very beginning.
They would have seen the plane on the radar and immediately dipped down or gotten up and just basically said, we're going to avoid you. But instead, I'm going to try to avoid you. I'm really going to avoid you.
I'm going,
hey,
listen, guy, if
I'm
you don't
really,
respond pretty soon, I'm going to move.
Yeah. And of course, once you're in visible range, if a plane is coming at you and you're in visible range,
You're already dead.
Because it's, hey, I can see you. Hey, you're dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, that lasted minutes, which means they all had very good eyesight.
Yes. Yes.
I also like the fact that satellite phones, just everybody had one and they all worked really well.
Well, except when they didn't, because it would be off, 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 off. Hey, it works beautifully for 2 seconds and then it's on, off again.
And by the way, how did he manage to record the message on her voicemail at home?
I feel like we just didn't see, like they didn't make it really known that he made a call and it stayed connected, and that's when, like, he dropped his phone when they were trying to avoid the other plane.
They just must have forgotten to show us that.
Exactly. So, people immediately start looting back at the mall. Oh, and then this girl, by the way, she had his clothes in his arms. She was holding his clothing in his backpack against her body, post-hug, where she had to feel him go floop and be gone. Like, we saw her confusion. And she spent the next half hour of the film running around both the mall, the city, the hospital, trying to find a little boy. And it wasn't until some sad lady in the maternity ward told her that all the babies were gone that she finally clicked in that people are disappearing, despite having seen direct evidence of this. Clothing just falling from the sky for some reason. It was falling from the sky in the mall. I have to imagine people who were like hanging over the balcony going, take a funny picture of me, as like, they were in the second floor.
Just fell down.
Yeah. But
and I did like the looting, the immediate looting.
Immediate looting. Not like, hey, confusion, everybody, let's band together and see what's going on. No, hey, money. Because money's going to be useful when everybody's...
Yeah, well, you got to have money. I guess you can burn it when you're in a fire, but or for a fire. But no, actually, this one on a scale of 1 to 10, that might not be good enough. We might need to start looking at the negative numbers below 0.
Or we can take it to a logarithmic scale where, like, 1 is 1, 2 is 10, 3 is 100.
Okay.
And then we can count up from there and do like percentages and variations there, kind of like the Richter scale a little bit.
Yeah, Richter scale, or square roots or cube roots or something.
Something like that. So in the end, what's happening here is that if I were to call The Avengers a solid 9 or 9.5 and call this movie a 1, it's not that. We're talking about 95% and 10%. We're talking about an atom versus a grain of sand, or an atom versus,
a 1,000 versus a tenth of one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that wonderful review behind us, I can hardly wait to see the next Nicolas Cage movie.
Or maybe the inevitable sequel, Left Behind 2, Electric Boogaloo. All right.